Must-knows for you as a guitarist. Yeah, there's a lot of them. But the thing that every true guitarist must know, the thing that'll determine how well you play along with other people or to your favorite songs, that lies in these 21 chords I'm about to teach you. So let's dive right in. First and foremost is the C chord. And it goes like this. Third finger is on the 3rd fret of the A string. Second finger is on the 2nd fret of the D string. G string is open. First finger is on the 1st fret of the B string. And then your high E string is open. You're just strumming the bottom 5 strings. And that's your quintessential C chord. Next up, we have the A chord. Now this one, there's a couple ways to play, and we'll get into that. So we're going to start with the open A string. Then first finger is on the 2nd fret of D. Your second finger is on the 2nd fret of G. Your third finger is on the 2nd fret of B. And then the high E is open. So just like C, we're playing the bottom 5 strings. So you could also play it like this if you want, or we're just switching the 1st and 2nd fingers. But again, it's this little stack on those 3 strings on the 2nd fret, right? You can also do it like this. Oop. As long as you play it right. There you go. You can omit the high E string and just play those 4 notes. Kind of sounds like the intro to Friends in Low Places. Because it is, right? Anyway, we're doing open A, right? 2nd fret on D, G, and B, and we're just fretting on the 2nd fret of all those 3 strings there, right? But you want to make sure that you know how to play it this way in its fullest extent, or you can play it like that. Next up is the G chord. This is usually the first chord most people learn. You're going to start with your 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. Then your first finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of the A string. D and G are open. And then your 3rd finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the B string. Then your pinky is going to be on the 3rd fret of the high E string. You're playing all 6 strings with this one. Now there are ways to play it. You can play it like this, where instead of having these 2 fingers here, the B string is open, and then 3rd fret on the high E, you're playing with your 3rd finger. Still qualifies as a G chord. All right. There's also a shape, you can play it like this. We're using your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E, 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of A, and your pinky, right, your 4th finger on the 3rd fret of the high E string. And this shape, even though it looks kind of wonky right here, it's actually really useful when you're switching back and forth from, let's say, a C chord. This makes it a lot easier than doing this. As you can see, a lot more movement and a lot more margin for error. Next up, we have the E chord. So this one also requires all 6 strings. We're going to start with the low E string open. Your 2nd finger's on the 2nd fret of the A string. 3rd finger's on the 2nd fret of the D string. Your 1st finger is on the 1st fret of G. And then B and high E are wide open. And you could also play it like this, right? Which kind of simulates what a bar chord shape looks like. If we, since we're playing in the open position, we don't really need that 1st finger. But it's kind of based on, right, when you think about bar chords, which, we'll get into in a little bit, it's based on that kind of E chord shape if we're talking about a major bar chord with all 6 strings. So it's a cool little fun fact. That'll come in handy later, though. And yeah, that's the E chord. Next up is D. This one we're playing the bottom 4 strings. So open D, first finger on 2nd fret of G. Your 3rd finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of B, and then your 2nd finger is on the 2nd fret of high E. And there's your D chord shape. Sometimes I've seen it played like this, or if you want a bar with your 1st finger on the bottom 3 strings, and then just have your 3rd finger playing the 3rd fret of the B string. That's a lot less common though. Typically you like to see it like this, because again, if you're going to be pivoting between different chords, like, it just kind of makes the movement that much more fluid, So that's the reason why, typically you'll see using all 3 of these fingers as opposed to those 2. And that's the D chord. Next up is the A minor chord. Okay, so we're going to be playing the low A string, or just the A string, right? Open. 2nd finger on 2nd fret of D. 3rd finger on 2nd fret of G. first finger on first fret of B, and then high E is open. Bottom 5 strings. There is A minor. And next up is E minor. This one requires all 6 strings, just like E major, right? It's actually, if you take the E major chord that we learned just a couple minutes ago, and then remove your first finger and let the G string be open, that becomes a minor chord. And fun fact, the difference between a major and a minor chord lies in the third, right? Which this note happens to be the third, right, for the E major. If we flatten the third, it now becomes minor. So that's just a little fun fact. You know, if you're ever trying to change a chord, you know, from a major to its parallel minor, so if we're changing from E major to E minor, we're just switching out that third, right? And in order to do that with this chord, we're just removing our first finger. So it's second finger on second fret of A, third finger on second fret of D, and then the rest of the strings are open. So low E is open, G, B, and high E are open. You could also use these 2 fingers if you want. I just tend to use these because, again, if I'm pivoting chords, you know, just kind of makes it easier when I'm switching back and forth between those chords. Next up at number 8, we have D minor. Okay, so we're going to be playing open D, and then our second finger is going to be on the second fret of the G string, third finger is on third fret of B, first finger is on first fret of high E, bottom 4 strings, just like in a D chord, only D minor. Remember how I mentioned, right, changing the third is what makes it minor. So if we're going from D major, this note right here happens to be the third, which, you know, just is the third note, right, in the major scale, in the D major scale. This note, we flatten it, right, we bring it down a fret, and we've now made it minor. And how we pivot those, right, if you wanted to go back and forth between D and D minor, you can keep your third finger glued to the fret just like that and just swap those 2 fingers. So again, one more time, D minor is open D, second fret on G, third fret on B, first fret on high E. And there's D minor. Coming up next is the inevitable F chord. You know, the F actually stands for favorite because it's everyone's favorite chord. Not. Okay, so here's how to play the F chord. Remember when I was telling you about the E chord, right, kind of looking like that behind the nut if we were to adapt it to a movable shape? We're literally taking that right up here and adapting it to the F chord. So it's essentially like an E chord shape, only we're bringing it up to F. So, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take our first finger, okay? We're going to be barring the 6 strings, but we don't have to actually mash. This is the difficult thing with this chord, and what a lot of people do is they think they have to mash their entire first finger on all 6 strings. You actually don't need to do that because we have these other 3 fingers that are going to be fretting notes for us. So all we really got to focus on are the notes that we're trying to hit, right? So in this case, you can actually curve your finger like this instead of like that, trying to make it, you know, parallel with because that just hurts to do that. You can curve your finger a bit. So you're playing the first fret of the low E string, and then you're fretting the B and high E strings. Those 3 strings are all we really need to hit with that first finger. So we can keep that curved and let the rest of the fingers, you know, do the rest of the work. So we have our third finger on the third fret of A, our fourth finger, our pinky, is on the third fret of D, and then our second finger here is on the second fret of G, and then B and high E, right, are barred. And just remember, you can kind of curve this finger, so you're really only putting pressure on the tip, you know, and on this part of your finger that's fretting the B and the high E string. So on 2 edges of your fingers, really, instead of the entire thing, right? But if even that's a whole lot for right now, one thing you can do is adapt the shape so you can omit that low F note and just bring this finger down to just fret the B and the high E strings, and you're playing the bottom 5 strings. That still qualifies as an F chord. Contains all the right notes, we're just missing that low F note. So if you can't play it like this right now, try it like this. That's a whole lot easier. Next up is an even bigger favorite, it's F minor. Haha, we're going to switch that third, we're going to flatten that third and make it minor. Here's the thing, it is a little bit tougher because we're actually going to be needing to fret 4 strings instead of 3 with our first finger here. So we're going to be fretting the first fret on the low E string and the G now, B and high E. Right? And then we have our third finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, and then our pinky is going to be on the 3rd fret of the D string. And then that's how we play it, right? But again, just like with the other one, if you're having a hard time with that, you can actually, omit that low F note and instead just bar the bottom 3 strings with your first finger and just start it on the 3rd fret on the A string here and just strum the bottom 5 strings. And that still qualifies as an F minor chord, which would be a lot easier than this. But over time, you'll get it. It's going to be a little achy at first. Believe me, that's normal. Right? But in the meantime, you can always adapt it like this and totally get away with playing the F minor chord. And hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this lesson and you've learned some new chords today, please let me know by hitting that like button and consider subscribing to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We create all these lessons with the help of our subscribers, and it's the only way to let me know that you want me to keep making more lessons like this. All right, now let's get back to some more chords. Next up at number 11, we're more than halfway, is the B chord. Okay, now this one is interesting because it actually takes the A chord shape, right? But adapts it to a movable shape and brings it up to the position where it's now a B chord. And it goes like this. We're going to be barring yet again, but we're just barring 2 strings here. Or we're just going to be fretting 2 strings. The A string on the 2nd fret with our tip of our first finger, and then the high E string 2nd fret. That's it. And then these 3 fingers, right, come in. So we got our 2nd finger on the 4th fret of D, 3rd finger on 4th fret of G, pinky on 4th fret of B. Right? You can even do it this way if you want, where you can omit that note by just using your 3rd finger to bar. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. Right? Still qualifies as a B chord. Right? So all you have to do is just bar, like I said, the 4th fret on the D, G, and B strings. And that perfectly qualifies there. And that's B. But of course we got to throw in its minor sibling, B minor. Right? We're going to flatten that 3rd. All right, so for this one, it's a little bit easier than the B major chord, in my opinion. We're going to do the same thing where we're barring the 2nd fret from the A string down, but we're just fretting the 2nd fret on the A and high E strings. And then we have 3rd finger on 4th fret of D, 4th finger on 4th fret of G, then 2nd finger on 3rd fret of B. And that's B minor. Now, thankfully, we've gotten through the hardest chords at this point, and we're going to start learning some dominant 7th chords, starting with C7, which is pretty cool. We're actually going to take the C chord, which we've already gone over, right, and we're going to add our 7th note, our flat 7. So we're going to take our pinky, and we're going to put it right there on the 3rd fret of the G string. See how much of a difference that makes? Just that one note from this to this. And you'll start to notice we're going to be doing a lot of dominant 7th chords. You'll start to see how we can adapt them to those different kind of sounds. But that right there is C7. Next up is A7. So remember this? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2nd finger and remove it. And we're going to play the open G string. So it's like this. So instead of this, we have now taken that 7, flattened it, right? Flat 7. Gives it that bluesy sound. Or if you're playing it like this, you're just removing your first finger. All right. Now if you're barring it like this, you're going to obviously need to use 2 fingers because we have to make room for that open G string. So you can do it like this or like this. And there you go. You have open A, 2nd fret on D, open G, 2nd fret on B, open high E. A7, baby. And next up is G7. So G7 is actually, it works best when you're playing the G chord like this, right? Where you're using your 3rd finger and your 2nd finger and your pinky. So what we're going to do is, instead of our pinky, we're going to now take our first finger and we're going to play the 1st fret of the high E string. Right? That's kind of not possible to do if you play the G chord like this, if you're trying to make it G7. So you kind of have to use this position so that you can play that first fret on high E, right? So we got 3rd fret on low E, 2nd fret on A, D and G are open, and B, and then we're playing 1st fret on high E. Hear the difference? All right, that's the great thing about those 7 chords. They just give it a little bit of extra stank. Next up at number 16 is E7. Haha. All we did was just change one note. That's the great thing about this. Is, just like with the minor chords, we're just changing one note to make it qualify as a whole new chord. So if you take your E chord, and then you remove the 3rd finger, and then make the D, the D string open, you now have E7. So it's a lot easier, just using these 2 fingers, just like with A7, right? And there's E7. Next up we have D7. It's kind of a reverse sort of triangle D shape, right? So what we're doing is open D, 2nd fret on the G string, 1st fret with our 1st finger on the B string, and then 2nd fret with our 3rd finger on the high E string. And there's D7. At number 18, we have the B7 chord. This is a fun one. So it's a far cry from that one, right? We're doing an open position B7 chord here. And it looks like this. We're going to have our 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of A, 1st finger on the 1st fret of D, 3rd finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of G, B is open, and then our pinky's on the 2nd fret of high E. And that's the infamous B7 chord. We're almost done. We're going to be going back into minor chords, this time minor 7 chords, starting with A minor 7. Gives a little bit more of a jazzy sound. So if you take the A minor chord that we just learned, and then remove your 3rd finger, so we're doing open G, it kind of adds a really nice intrigue in terms of just like the sound of the chord, right? And again, makes it feel a little bit more jazzy. So that's how you adapt the A minor, the A natural minor, right, to A minor 7. Next up at number 20 is E minor 7. This is probably the easiest chord of all because it's just requiring one finger, right, on the 2nd fret of the A string. You can use your 1st finger or your 2nd finger and you strum all 6 strings. So again, we're taking that note right there, that flat 7, just giving it that really, really nice, slightly extra jazzy sound. So I think of all these 21 chords, that one right there is probably the easiest to play. And finally, last but not least, at number 21, we have the D minor 7 chord. So with this one, it's open D, 2nd fret on second finger on 2nd fret of G, right? And then our 1st finger is barring the 1st fret on the B and high E strings. So remember, we're playing it from the D string down, just like the D chord and the D minor chord. All right, and that right there is D7. Whew, so we just covered the 21 must-know chords for you as a guitarist. Now that you got these under your belt, there is nothing stopping you from playing along to your favorite songs or even jamming with other musicians. And since you've made it this far, then you, my friend, deserve a free gift, which is going to make the next steps for your guitar playing a whole lot easier. And it's this bad boy right here. A 30-second quiz that's going to tell you your #1 guitar progress killer. After teaching more than 1.5 million students through Guitar Mastery Method, through online workshops and courses and even one-on-one coaching sessions, I have identified that there are 12 progress killers that are holding you and other guitar players back from getting the results that you want most. The team and I have spent years developing and perfecting this free guitar analysis that's already helped thousands upon thousands of guitar players find out what their biggest challenges are. So if you're ready to discover what's holding you back as a guitarist, click the link below, and in just a minute, you're going to get a customized video training and bonus reference material to beat what it is that's holding you back. And on that note, I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me in this lesson today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I'm Eddie with Guitar Mastery Method, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.